Huh? This is my PowerPoint presentation on chapter 12 in the textbook and my observations of modern day Latin America, and then in comparison, and then wow, going to compare the two. So I'm just gonna get started. Okay, sorry. Okay, so these are the key points I took from the textbook. I split them into positive and negative because I noticed there were patterns in that there were a lot of really, really great things happening during this time, but also a lot of like with the change, it became turned into some negative things as well. So I will start. One of the positive things was that leftist ideas were enforced. This was because there were a lot of new presidents being elected into Latin American countries that were very democratic, and they wanted to not completely change economic systems and social systems, but to, or not replace, sorry, but they wanted to change them in a non-violent way. And this was slightly new for Latin America. There was a shift between people less wanting to use bullets for change and more towards using votes for change, which is a very good thing. During this time, there was also a lot of activism and social justice. A lot of Native peoples, LGBTQ peoples, women, they were all very active during this time. And there was a huge push for equality among these people, which was a good thing that we even saw some women presidents. Even though I don't believe these women presidents were fully elected because they were candidates, but more so that their husbands stepped down or died and they had to take their place. They still did a lot of really great things, these women presidents, so that was really good to see. Um, Continuing on, there was I would say, historic increase in the middle class. There was a huge spike or a huge like shift between people being very, very, very poor to population starting to climb into the middle class, and even to the point where people in the middle class were not threatened to be kicked out of the middle class anymore, and that it's actually looking up for over half of the population in Latin American countries for people to stay comfortably in the middle class and to be able to support their families and have a job, and which is very, very good to see and something that you don't always see historically in Latin America. And a lot of these things can be wrapped under the wording of social change. Um, but like I said earlier, there was a lot less violence and more discussions, which is a very, very good thing. Unfortunately, with the negatives, there's always negatives because it is Latin America is such a wide range of countries and regions that just unfortunately the positives don't reach all of the places, all the corners. So drug wars is definitely becoming a big thing even in the modern day. There's a lot of drug issues and drug trading and drug selling um, in Latin America. There was still some inequality. A lot of mostly native Latin Americans are still feeling like their lands are being taken from them and they don't have the same rights as other people who were born in this country. So we are still dealing with that today. There is still an extreme poverty in some countries. Um, because even though there was an increase in the middle class, the people who are in poverty are still very, very much in poverty. That is in no access to food, no access to clean water, education, all that. And then going along with drug wars, there's still a lot of violence in some Latin American countries. Um, Once again, mainly due to drug wars, gang violence, the cartel. Yeah, modern day Latin America. So, contrary to historic Latin America, there is a large increase in democracy and change and economic strength and just overall um, well-being in these countries, which is really, really great to see. But I put these three ladies down here because it's like there's a lot of great things happening in Latin America, a lot of okay things happening, and a lot of pretty bad things happening in Latin America still. But So yeah, we'll start with the US versus China for economy. I noticed in some of the readings I did for my modern day research was that China is slowly becoming one of the biggest, um, one of the biggest countries that are supporting the economies in Latin America, which I found very interesting. And the United States, well, it's not that the United States is stepping down from these countries, it's more that these countries aren't in support of the United States anymore. And that follows my second point, which was our President Donald Trump. I had to mention him because he's been choosing to deal with a lot of issues in Latin America, as we all know in the recent news of Mexico and Venezuela. But I would say he's doing more negative than good, but we'll just leave that as that is. So I mentioned post-COVID because I read an article mentioning that a lot of people who are in Latin America, some of the people within lower middle class and power, even in the poverty line, they did not have access to online work or online learning during COVID, which what I would assume is a setback for some communities in Latin America. I just thought that was a point to make. And I also mentioned that it is still a very, very, very diverse country or continent, I should say. Still one of the most diverse places in the world. And it has some of the largest populations, like city-wise. So Latin America in ways is thriving today, and in some ways is struggling, but that usually depends on which country you look at. And yeah, the end. Okay.